Haunted secrets revealed, 7 spine-chilling true scary stories to expose tonight in the rain. The rain hammered against the windows like angry fists intent on breaching the Thompson family's sanctum. Lightning flashed, illuminating their living room for an instant, a perfect tableau of fear. Mark, Sarah, Jenna, and Liam huddled together, feeling the chill seep deep into their bones as thunder roared, shaking the very walls of their sanctuary. "Let us share some scary stories," Mark suggested, his voice a mix of bravado and underlying apprehension. They had always found comfort in storytelling, but tonight, the storm seemed to mock their warmth. Mark leaned forward, the shadows dancing ominously on his face. "Have any of you heard about Mr. Jenkins, our neighbor?" His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed a hint of fear. The old man, known for his peculiar ways, wandered the yard at odd hours, creeping like a ghost. "People say children have disappeared in the summer, last seen with him." "Weird, right?" Jenna's eyes widened, her mind racing back to time spent playing near his property. Could he really be that sinister? Unbeknownst to them, outside, the storm brewed darker, feeding off their dread. Sarah, who often watched scary movies alone while the kids were out, chimed in. "You know, the mayor." She hesitated, gauging their interest. "He's the town hero, always donating to charities." But, there were whispers. "Years ago, a girl disappeared. Rumor has it he was the last one seen with her." The room chilled, each family member feeling it grasp at them, their breaths quickening as shadows inched closer. They each started to sweat at the eeriness creeping into their usual comfort. Then came soft knocks, barely audible, yet echoing through the silence, a reminder of every spooky story ever told. Liam shrugged it off. "Just the wind," he said, but doubt crept under his skin. The laughter that warmed the room quickly faded, replaced by an unsettling tension. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. "Look, it's just a storm," Mark assured, but his words lacked conviction. Sarah fumbled for a candle, but her hands trembled unsteadily. Mark moved closer, a protective arm around her shoulder. A distant, eerie wail drifted through the cracks of the storm. They exchanged terrified glances. Was it really just thunder? Then it came again, louder, clearer, a voice from somewhere deep within the shadows, a plea muffled by the chaos outside. "What if it's not outside, Mark? What if it's already here?" Sarah whispered, and the air thickened with dread. They knew enough stories to connect the threads of what was happening. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the storm raged on, the family scrambled for their phones, but they all blinked to a dead screen. Panic set in. "What do we do?" Liam stammered, eyes darting. Whispers danced through the room, hushed, and familiar names slipping from lips that once called them friend, echoing their long-buried fears. A loud crash erupted from the kitchen, shattering the fragile silence. Shadows flickered, twisting in the candlelight. They jumped to their feet, adrenaline inclining their hearts to race. What was lurking beyond those walls? And as the door burst open, rain slashing the threshold, an apparition stood silhouetted against the storm's fury, a figure dripping with ominous intent. "No!" Sarah gasped, as the familiar shape took form, revealing secrets they never thought could be real. The family went stiff, dread locking their limbs, uncertainty coiling around them like a suffocating fog. What truth awaited them in the darkness? Would they even survive the haunting of their own home? The figure stepped into the room, water pooling around its feet, and the candlelight flickered wildly as if protesting its arrival. It was Mr. Jenkins, but not as they remembered him. His eyes were hollow, mouth stretched into a grim smile that sent shivers down their spines. He looked drenched to the bone, hair matted to his head, but it was his presence that felt the most chilling of all. "Please," he rasped, his voice a mere whisper over the pounding rain, "help me." Panic surged through Mark's veins. "What do you want?" he managed to croak, as the others pressed closer, their hearts pounding in unison. Mr. Jenkins stepped forward slowly, as if each movement pained him. His hands were outstretched, shaking. "I didn't mean to, they wouldn't listen." Liam felt his stomach clench. This was the man they had heard tales of, the monster of their childhood stories. Jenna's face turned pale, her breaths short and quick. You're the reason for the disappearances, aren't you?" The rain dwindled to a low whisper now, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Mr. Jenkins's eyes locked onto Jenna's. "It wasn't me. I can prove it." His voice trembled, but a thin sheen of desperation wrapped around every word. A thunderous crash sent them all jumping again, and the shadows around Mr. Jenkins grew larger, absorbing the flickering light. "You have to know the truth." "They're here too," he insisted, panic leaking into his voice. Mark shook his head, backing away. "Get out. You're not welcome here." "Do you think I want to be here? I am cursed trapped." Mr. Jenkins roared, suddenly rising up on his tiptoes, a deep rasp escaping from the depths of his throat. With each word, the air thickened. "You will be next unless you help me." "Help you? Why would we help you?" Sarah shouted over the rising wind that spurred back to life, slapping against the windows. Her eyes darted to the shadows lurking in the corners of their home, feeling more than seeing their danger. "Because," Mr. Jenkins gasped, drawing closer, "I know who they really are." Just as he spoke, there was a sickening thud from the back of the house, a sound that resonated like a heartbeat. The lights flickered back on, illuminating the face of Mr. Jenkins once more, but in the brief flash, a dark shape slithered behind him. The family gasped in unison. A wailing laughter echoed through the room, sending jolts of terror rippling through them. "That's not him," Liam shouted, now pointing at the figure slowly merging with the shadows behind Mr. Jenkins. "That's what made him like that. Listen." Mr. Jenkins screamed, his voice cracking with urgency. "The darkness is alive. It hungers for you, it wants," but he was cut off by a crash. The apparition behind him lunged forward. Jenna screamed, but it was lost amidst the howling wind. As the spectral shape clawed its way forward, Mark felt the tight grip of dread. "Stay back!" he yelled, as he instinctively pushed Sarah and the kids behind him, a futile attempt to shield them from the looming terror. The candle flickered weakly, its flame barely holding on against the rising darkness. "What do we do?" Jenna cried, eyes wide, glancing around for an escape. Time seemed to stretch, dragging out every second, and the shadows encroached, thickening around the five of them. "Trust me," Mr. Jenkins rasped, "don't let it take you. Fight with me." And as the entity lunged forward, ready to claim its next victim, Mark's heart pounded. Would they trust this broken figure, or was he just as dangerous as the shadows threatening to consume them? The storm outside thundered louder, drowning out their thoughts. The question hung in the air: would their fate intertwine with a man they thought was a monster, or would they face the true horror of what lay in the dark with them? The shadows loomed, and Mark was left with a choice that could seal their fates. But they had to act fast, because the storm wasn't done yet. What awaited them in the next moment could change everything. The darkness lunged with a ferocity that left no room for hesitation. Mark could feel its cold breath brushing against him, the stench of mildew and rot washing over him like a thick fog. He barely had time to process Mr. Jenkins's plea before the entity bore down on them, a swirling mass of shadow and malice. "Jenna, follow my lead!" Mark screamed, his voice tearing through the mounting chaos. He grabbed the nearest candle, its wax body threatening to break under the strain of the flickering light. "We need to find a way to stop it." He raised the flame, hoping to wield it like a sword against the dark. In that heartbeat, despair clawed at him. How could a simple candle protect them against something so vile? Beside him, Mr. Jenkins recoiled, his face a mask of terror. You don't understand. The light will only make it stronger if you don't know how to wield it. What do you mean? Liam shouted, clutching onto Sarah as if she were a lifeline. The children were whimpering now, their wide eyes reflecting pure dread. It feeds on fear. You must embrace the truth, face what you fear the most. Mr. Jenkins cried, his voice distorted. He seemed to flicker, merging with the shadows around him like a disoriented moth caught in a bright beam. But how could they confront something that thrived on their terror? Mark's heart raced. Could the truth really save them? Was Mr. Jenkins right, or was this a trap? The entity paused, hesitating just long enough for the family to stumble back against the wall. They huddled together, a fragile line against the creeping darkness. We can't let it take us. Mark shouted, desperation rising in his throat. With one swift motion, Jenna stepped forward, defiance etched across her face. Then we need to find out what it wants. Panic surged in her eyes but seemed to twist into resolve. She turned to Mr. Jenkins. What truth do we need to face? Mr. Jenkins shifted, the shadows pressing around him like ominous fog. It knows your secrets, the ones you hide even from yourselves. As he spoke, the figure inched closer. Its laughter swelled again, a haunting melody that wormed into their minds. Each note rattled their resolve, feeding the anxiety that wanted to crush them. Mark felt his breath quicken, and a paralyzing chill raced down his spine. It comes for your past. The memories that haunt you. Jenna shivered, heart pounding. It was true, there were shadows in their memories, secrets they had buried deep. We have to confront them, she urged, desperately glancing at each family member. We can't let it take us. Mark felt sweat trickle down the back of his neck as tension thickened. But what if confronting them only makes things worse? What if it kills us? No. Sarah cried, gripping Mark's arm fiercely. We need to fight. We can't keep living in fear. Mr. Jenkins's hollow eyes bore into the family, the shadows shifting, swirling around him like storm clouds. Then face it. Each of you must recognize what it wants. The shadows lurked closer, multiplying in intensity, and for a split second, a strange resolve lit a spark in Mark's chest. He thought of the secrets he kept, of the choices he regretted. Could he face them? Could they all? Together. Mark shouted, holding Jenna's hand tightly. We do this together. But just as they began to focus, the entity erupted in a shriek that resonated like shattered glass. No. You will not take away my feast. Then, just as suddenly, it surged toward them, darkness enveloping the room. Time stood still, it felt as if the very air had been sucked from their lungs. A frantic rush followed, hearts pounding, a desperate moment caught between hope and despair. As they braced for impact, the connection they shared flickered like the candle flame, a thin line between life and the void. In that petrifying instant, the only question remaining was whether their bond would shatter under the weight of dread or illuminate their path toward salvation. For the storm raged outside, but the true tempest was just beginning within. What unspeakable horrors would they unearth in their fight for survival? Would they find the strength to face their demons, or would the darkness swallow them whole? The darkness exploded around them, an oppressive weight compressing their very souls. Mark felt Jenna squeeze his hand tighter, her nails digging into his skin. Don't let go. She whispered, her voice trembling, nearly swallowed by the cacophony of sinister laughter echoing through the shadows. Focus on what you're afraid of. Mr. Jenkins shouted above the din, his form flickering in and out of view. The shadows twisted and contorted, becoming grotesque representations of their deepest fears. A wailing cry sliced through the air as a figure emerged, reflecting the absence of hope. Mark's breath quickened. It was his father, the last memory he had before everything shattered, unsaid words, endless regret. You let me down, Mark. The figure wailed, a mirror of disappointment. You think you can escape? No. Mark shouted, shaking his head in disbelief. You're not real. You're just a part of this. Sweat rolled down his brow as pain shot through him. He had wanted to make his father proud. Hadn't they just buried that past? On the other side, Jenna was frozen in place. Her darkness morphed into an image of a lost childhood, her once beloved stuffed rabbit, torn and abandoned. Why did you leave me? It croaked, in her own voice, pulling her further into despair. Jenna, fight it. Mark yelled, desperation clawing at him. He wanted to reach out, but the fear wrapped around him like creeping vines, pinning him down. You have to remind yourself those memories don't define you. Sarah stood stunned, terror creeping into every crevice of her mind. In the depths of the swirling shadows, she could see snippets of her reckless choices, mistakes that led to broken friendships. I'm nothing without them. She cried, her voice just above a whisper. Don't say that. Liam interjected, pulling her closer. You're stronger than these demons. We can't let them feed on us. He echoed Mark's sentiment, igniting a fragile flicker of hope. The specters surrounding them wobbled, their forms shifting as they fed on the darkness. The air became thick, electric, each family member's anguish drawing the shadows in closer. It was feeding time, and the stakes were unbearable. Embrace the truth. Mr. Jenkins shouted, his voice shaking, but his eyes full of determination. Don't let it overwhelm you. Show it what you stand for. Mark nodded, trying to wipe the fog of dread from his mind. What did he stand for? He thought of Jenna, the laughter they had shared. He thought of Sarah, her unwavering love despite the chaos. They were worth fighting for. Okay. Okay. He yelled, trying to gather courage through the gelid fear around him. Let us shed light on what this thing wants. He turned to his family, determination igniting. Together. But the shadows shrieked in defiance, drowning out their words. You think you can defy me? I am your fears. I am everything you wish to forget. Suddenly, a beam of candlelight flickered brighter, casting shadows that danced around them, almost alive. Hold it together. Mark shouted, gripping it tightly. Don't let it snuff you out. Fueled by their joint strength, Jenna finally spoke, voice steady with resolve. You're nothing but a bad dream. You can't take us if we face you. The entity hesitated, a tremor coursing through the air as if the shadows were retreating just slightly. Could it be? What happens if we confront you? Mark yelled, adrenaline surging. Suddenly, every ounce of energy he felt started to pulse through him. It wasn't just shadows, it was their emotions, their fears giving the darkness power. Show us. A moment of eerie silence followed, pregnant with anticipation. Each family member locked eyes, heartbeats synchronizing as they prepared to unveil their truths. Perhaps the worst of it all could be unlocked with courage after all, wasn't the thing they feared the most within themselves. As the shadows swirled, growing more intense, Mark held the candle higher, light spilled into the chamber, illuminating what lay ahead. It flickered, casting long shadows across the walls, and the shriek of the entity rose once more, a final, horrific cry of defiance. The weight of it all pressed in, and Mark could barely breathe. They had to finish this. They had to fight. Bring it on. He bellowed, feeling his courage entwine with every crackling flicker of light. But just as the shadows seemed to waver, an unsettling laughter erupted from the depths of darkness, an unsettling reminder that the true confrontation had yet to begin. What new revelations loomed in the heart of that darkness? Could they truly break free from its chilling grasp, or would their fears unearth horrors buried deeper than they could possibly imagine? The laughter echoed, a cacophonous wave that rolled through the shadows, engulfing them in dread. It was as if the darkness gained strength, drawing them back like a menacing tide. Mark's resolve faltered for a split second. No, he breathed, fear clawing at him. Together. He roared, igniting the spark of courage in his voice. Each member of the family clutched the candle tighter, determined not to let their fears snuff out the flicker of hope. They formed a circle, banishing the distance between their haunted souls. "Face it," Jenna whispered, her voice shaky but firm. "This is just a nightmare." Her gaze locked onto the malevolent shadows, a mixture of fear and defiance igniting a fire within her. They stood united, trembling but not backing down. Suddenly, the shadows writhed, pulling tighter around them, the air thick enough to choke on. An overwhelming wave of anguish surged through, threatening to break their formation. "Show us the truth," Liam shouted, pushing through the oppressive gloom. The shadows rippled, revealing distorted images of their past, betrayal, loss, moments they wished to forget. Each image carried with it a terrible weight. Mark gasped as he saw a vision of his father, anger etched deep into a gnarled face, disappointment flickering in hollow eyes. "You can't escape this. You'll always be a failure," it hissed. The darkness swirled tighter at the edges of his vision, pulling him closer to the edge of despair. "Fight back," Mr. Jenkins urged, his voice cutting through the despair like a blade. "These are only memories. They can't hurt you." Mark took a shuddering breath. Each fear was a thread woven into the fabric of his being. He would not be defeated. He recalled the laughter of family game nights, the warmth of summer evenings. Those memories were his refuge. "You're wrong," he shouted, shaking off the shadow's grip. "I've grown. I am not my past." At that moment, the candlelight blazed bright, illuminating the grotesque figures that surrounded them. For each person emboldened by their voice, shadows wavered, recoiling as if burned. Jenna squared her shoulders and faced the rabbit, its monstrous form disintegrating under her fierce gaze. "You won't control me anymore," she yelled, her voice resonating with conviction. The oppressive weight began to lift. Sarah clenched her fists, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I did make mistakes, but they don't define who I am." Her sorrow transformed into strength, and fragments of blame shattered around her. Each declaration chipped away at the shadow's foundation. Suddenly, the shrieks morphed into discordant cries, an angry cacophony that rattled the walls. "Enough!" Mark bellowed. "We're taking back the power." The flickering candle cast vibrant colors across the battlefield of darkness. Light danced among the shadows, igniting their resolve wider. "We stand as one," Liam pronounced, the words echoing through the chamber like a rallying cry. But just as they felt momentum shift, the laughter echoed again, louder and more sinister than before. It reverberated through the air, mocking their triumph. "Foolish children. You think you know fear? You haven't even begun to see what I can show you." Panic surged through Mark's veins. What other secrets did the darkness hold? As the shadows spiraled into a whirlpool of black, reality began to splinter. One by one, the house began to tremble, the walls shaking violently. "What now?" Jenna cried, glancing around in terror. Each person's face morphed into fear, dread settling in the pit of their stomach. The shadows loomed large, gathering strength, ready to unleash their true power. Liam's eyes widened. "We can't let it take us again. We have to push back harder." With that realization, they each took a step forward, stepping into the depths of the shadows rather than retreating. They would confront the terror head-on, but at what cost? What unknown horrors awaited them as they descended further into the heart of the darkness? Mark could feel a presence shifting, watching and waiting. The shadows throbbed like a living entity, full of malice and intent. "Are you ready to face your darkest fears?" The voice echoed, slick with hunger. They had come this far, but now stood on the precipice of something far more sinister. Would they find liberation from their past, or mere despair in the face of overwhelming shadows? The answer lingered in the air like a breath held just too long. The shadows roared with laughter, a taunting symphony that swallowed the air around them. Mark felt himself trembling, though he refused to show it. The entities were feeding on their fear, each echo growing louder, more menacing. "Stay strong," he commanded, forcing his feet to press onward. As they plunged deeper into the dark, the ground beneath them felt alive and cold, vibrating with unseen forces. Jenna glanced over her shoulder. What if we're walking into a trap? Her wide eyes glimmered with doubt. We have to trust ourselves. Liam shouted, keeping pace with Mark. We won't let them dictate our fears. Yet, the shadows seemed to thicken, an oppressive fog wrapping around their minds. Images swirled dangerously close again, nightmares, regrets, the deepest secrets they each hid. Mark felt a flash of guilt, a whisper of the past clawing at his consciousness. No. He cried out, shaking it off. We are more than our memories. But the voice continued to taunt. Is that so? You think you can escape? Let us see what lurks within. Suddenly, one figure emerged from the shadows, dragging the darkness with it. It slithered forward, an echo of a previous life, a flickering form that twisted like smoke. The familiar silhouette took shape, drawing a gasp from Sarah. No, not you. Her voice cracked, revealing a wound long since scabbed over. The figure changed, intensifying the emotional storm. It was everything they feared and loathed about themselves, combined. Do you recognize me? The voice was both comforting and horrific, a mix of laughter and whispers, echoing her greatest insecurities. Sarah crumpled, eyes wide, and nearly lost her grip on the candle. Stand firm. Mark yelled, the firelight illuminating their faces. But the shadow shrieked, a sound that chilled the marrow in their bones. It snaked toward Sarah, seeking to pull her into despair. No. She is stronger than this. Liam shouted, stepping ahead. The candle flared around them, but fear fought back, grasping at their legs like icy hands. Mark felt a burning rage rise within him, an urge to protect. You don't hold power over her. As if responding to his challenge, a new shadow broke free, this time stalking towards him, filled with the essence of every failure he had ever faced. Look closer, it hissed, voice dripping with venom. You're nothing without them. Everything inside Mark screamed to let go, to unravel in the darkness. He could hear his father's voice again, loading every syllable with guilt. You're not the son I wanted. You'll always disappoint. Shut up. Mark erupted, and in emotion fueled by anger and defiance, he charged at the shadow. He swung the candle, the flame biting through the murky darkness. The apparition screeched, recoiling as the light scorched its form, but it didn't fade wholly. It faded just enough to leave a chilling promise behind. You may battle, but you will never win. The air crackled with tension. All at once, the ground split, and more shadows surged forward, twisting, writhing creatures. Their eyes dark, soulless voids latched onto every flickering hope in the room. Panic gripped the family like a vice, ready to fracture their unity. Together. Jenna urged again, her voice rising above the din. They squeezed hands tighter, surrounded by the monster of their fears. Would the light of hope be enough to turn the tide against ceaseless torment? Would they walk away from the darkness or be consumed by it entirely? As the shadows spiraled tighter, Mark felt a syncopated heartbeat, not just his, but echoing around him, a desperate rhythm that matched their unyielding panic. We will not fall. He screamed to the abyss, but the darkness roared back, hunger unleashed, and in that moment, an unsettling realization settled over him. What if confronting their fears only made them stronger? Would their bravery be their salvation, or were they merely feeding the very darkness they were trying to escape? As the shadows closed in, the vine of dread tightened, constricting their hopes, leaving the question hanging in suffocating silence. What would remain of them? After this confrontation? Mark's heart raced. The shadows twisted around them, their collective whispers a maddening cacophony. Every fraction of light felt precious, yet there were too many forms swirling in the darkness, hungry, insatiable. What now? He shouted. We need to stay together. The thrumming heartbeat echoed, but something in it felt foreign. Was it theirs? Or was it the shadows mirroring their despair? Each pulsing beat sent a shiver down his spine. He looked at Sarah. Her eyes mirrored uncertainty, and her hand trembled in his grip. A spiked wave of dread trapped them in this vortex. Jenna squeezed her eyes shut. "What do we do?" Her voice came out shaky, quavering like a thin branch in a storm. "Hold on!" Liam yelled, his determination fierce but thin, like a brittle glass teetering on the edge of a table. He thrust the candle forward, the flicker of light cutting a path. The shadows hissed, writhing as if the flame was a white-hot brand upon their ashen bodies. "Mark!" Sarah cried, tugging at him. "What if we can't fight them? What if they turn us against each other?" "No." Mark's voice thundered, but doubt crept into the seams of his confidence like a slow poison. They were showing them their fears. What lay beyond their pain? What if it was something worse than their darkest imaginings? As if answering his unspoken fears, the shadows morphed, forming into grotesque versions of themselves. Figures of their past's taunts from school, missed chances, betrayals, each of them a reminder of failures supposed to be buried. "Why can't you just accept your fate?" The shadows shrieked, their voices blending into a nightmarish chorus. "You're too weak. Too broken. You'll never escape this." "No." Mark yelled again, desperation fueling the words. With one sweeping motion, he burst forward, candle held high. "We are not weak. We have each other." But in response, the shadows surged, crashing against their little pocket of light. Jenna staggered back, enveloped in black tendrils that coiled like snakes around her limbs. "Help! Jenna!" Liam dove for her, but a hollow cry pulled her further into darkness. Mark felt the air growing cold, frigid tendrils wrapping around his heartbeat. He glanced at Sarah, eyes clouded with fear. "I can't lose you too." They all lunged, grappling, trying to reach Jenna. But with every inch they gained, the shadows tightened their unyielding grip, pulling her deeper into their maw. "Strength, it's all an illusion," hissed one shadow, digging deep. "There's no comfort in love, only betrayal." "No." The word rang clear. "We'll fight," Mark shouted, resolve bubbling to the surface. They drew closer, the candle casting flickers on diminishing hope. The flame flickered. They weren't just fighting shadows, they were battling their own reflections. "Take my hand," he yelled to Sarah. "We can't give in." With strength he didn't know he had, he reached for Jenna, and the rest followed suit. Their hands interlinked, forming a chain of will against the oppressive darkness. For a split second, unity lit their path, but the shadows drew back for a moment, a sinister pause, before lunging again, more ferocious this time. "You think you're safe?" The darkness taunted, a million voices rising in a crescendo. "You are nothing here." Suddenly, Mark felt a sharp pain, a jolt coursing through him like ice, snapping at the edges of his sanity. A figure materialized behind him, a memory, a fragment of the past he'd buried deep. It pulled him with a magnetic force. "Join us, be with us, Mark," Sarah cried. But that icy whisper crept under his skin, seeping through his thoughts, eroding the bond they had forged. What was left if they lost their grip? What defined them when shadows spoke the truth he didn't want to accept? Something clicked deep within him. With a primal scream, fueled by every ounce of love and fear, he surged against the shadow's clutches. "No. We are not our fears." The shadows writhed in fury, but the candle flared brighter, the light fighting through the void. Hold on. But could they hold on? As the shadows recoiled again, Mark wondered if this light would be enough to break them free, or if it would only reveal something darker lurking just beyond the flame. What awaited them on the other side of this confrontation? Would they find salvation or unleash a terror beyond comprehension? The shadows surged forward again, a relentless tide crashing against their fragile barrier of light. Mark felt the tremor in his hands as he held the candle aloft, the flame flickering dangerously, threatening to snuff out under the weight of their fear. The darkness pulsed, hungry for vulnerability, and with every heartbeat, it closed in tighter, whispering promises of despair. "Jenna! Fight! You don't belong to them!" Liam screamed, desperation slicing through his words. She was almost fully entombed in the grasp of the unseen force, her terrified eyes pleading for help, for clarity, for anything but the choking darkness. "Mark!" Sarah's voice cut through, frantic and raw. "What if we lose her forever?" "No. We won't lose anyone." He felt the warmth of Sarah's hand, the strength of their entwined fingers. It ignited a primal instinct in him, one that pushed against the encroaching shadows. "Quit trying to resist." The shadow voices hissed, their terrible harmony weaving in and out of his consciousness. "You're outnumbered. Accept your fate." The air grew thick, smothering. Mark's breath hitched as memories swirled around him, each shadow a debugged phantasm of regret, a moment he never changed. He could see his reflection in a dark puddle, distorting the truth into something grotesque. What if they were right? What if they were failures? But Jenna's scream broke through his spiraling thoughts, sharp and electric. In that moment, clarity surged through him. "Remember our promise?" Mark shouted, his voice rising against the suffocating whispers. "We always fight together. We won't let them take her." The candle flickered defiantly, its light a pulse against the oppressive dark. Mark clenched his jaw, drawing strength from within. He gathered the remnants of his resolve and shouted into the abyss, "We are more than our fears." The shadows recoiled, a momentary hesitation, but it didn't last. They surged forward, angering like a beast disturbed. The cacophony of voices morphed into a scream that filled the void, a chorus of the damned. Suddenly, without warning, the darkness swirled violently, as if caught in a cyclone. The shadows began to separate, revealing shapes of twisted faces and haunted eyes, each one a remnant of their worst fears come to life. Jenna's body thrashed, her face a mask of terror as if she was slipping through time, lost in a whirlpool of past mistakes. "Jenna!" Liam shouted, lunging toward her. But an invisible wall pushed him back, a barrier forged from despair and sorrow that crackled with dark energy. "No!" Sarah's voice rang out with new conviction. "We can do this together. We have to believe." They strained against the dark tide, arms outstretched, hearts racing with unyielding desperation. The candle flickered, stuttering as shadows clawed at it, hungry for the light. In that instant, a realization crashed over Mark. This was not just about escaping. It was about confronting the darkness inside. It was their self-doubt, their internal struggles, that were feeding these creatures of night. "Hold hands. Focus on your light." He shouted, pulling Sarah closer, feeling Jenna's presence vibrating against the void. The moment their energy united, the candle flared again, bursting with renewed brilliance. Shadows hissed, retreating as light flowed between them, binding their fears into the illumination. They were stronger together, a force battling against the age-old terror that threatened to consume them. But just as victory seemed at hand, a deep rumble echoed from the depths of the shadow realm, a sinister promise that chilled Mark to his core. "You think this is an escape? You've only scratched the surface. The real horror waits ahead." With a bone-chilling dread settling in, Mark felt the ground rumble beneath them, and then something shifted. The shadows dissolved momentarily, opening a blackened path, darker than anything they had faced yet, and through that gaping maw released a haunting whisper, enticing yet terrifying. "Dare you enter? The truth shall unveil." Would they step forward into the unknown? What horrors lay hidden in that beckoning darkness? The choice loomed, their breaths trapped in the moments before action. A heavy silence filled the air, thick like fog, pressing down on them as if the darkness itself was waiting for their decision. Mark's heart thundered in his ears, drowning out everything else. Sarah's grip tightened on his hand, her warmth a fragile tether to courage. "Do we really have a choice?" Liam whispered, his eyes darting nervously toward the gaping void. Mark swallowed hard, fighting against the rising tide of dread curling around his throat. Jenna's figure twisted in the shadows, every flicker of the candle illuminating her face, a haunting reminder of what they stood to lose. "We have to confront it," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "It's the only way to find her." With a shared nod, they stepped toward the new darkness. Each step felt like an eternity. The shadows fluttered, swirling around their ankles like mourning veils, whispering their fears and regrets as they approached the threshold. "You're not ready, you'll never understand," they hissed, drowning the air with doubt. Mark took a deep breath. "Together," he urged, forcing hope into each word like a blade cutting through the fog. As they crossed the threshold, the world fell away. The light of the candle faded, replaced by an overwhelming absence of light. Panic surged as Mark staggered, disoriented by the sudden engulfing darkness. "Hold on!" Sarah shouted, but her voice barely pierced the suffocating void as they stumbled deeper into the unknown. With sheer will, Mark focused on Jenna, imagining her face, the laughter they shared, the promise of friendship. He felt a flicker of warmth in the heart of this cold abyss, a thread of connection that refused to fray. Suddenly, visions exploded in their minds, horrors of their past played out before them like a twisted montage. When Mark had failed to protect his sister, Sarah's darkest secret, one she buried even from herself, Liam's betrayal that shattered their trust. The shadows fed on their anguish, twisting their memories into grotesque forms, laughter echoing all around them. "No!" Mark screamed, fighting against the tide of despair. "These aren't who we are." But the figures shifted and twirled, voices harmonizing in a sick lullaby that coiled around them. "You think you can escape the truth? This is your reality, your failures." With every second, the shadows grew bolder, creeping closer, their tendrils brushing against their skin, cold as steel. Mark squeezed Sarah's hand, igniting the last ember of resolve within him. "Remember the promise," he breathed, his voice a lifeline that reached back through the fear. "We face our truth together." In that moment of shared conviction, the heaviness began to lift. The shadows recoiled as light sparked from their joined hands, radiating warmth, the pure intent of friends striving against the night. But just as the shadows melted, a more terrifying presence loomed. An echoing laugh rippled through the darkness, chilling them to their bones. "You think you can thwart the inevitable? You're merely pawns in a game you cannot comprehend." The ground trembled beneath their feet again, an unsettling reminder that they were still far from safe. Before them loomed an endless corridor of swirling shadows, inspecting the four with hungry eyes. They needed to escape, to move onward, yet dread held them in place. "What now?" Liam whispered, panic squeezing his chest. Mark felt the weight of choice heavy on him once more. "We keep going. We find Jenna." But the shadows coalesced again, forming monstrous shapes, blocking their path. "Turn back, or remain in darkness forever." Desperation spiraled through their throats. With a push fueled by fear, they took a step forward, unaware of the horrors that awaited, the truth they were about to unveil. The air thickened, pulsing with malevolence. As they ventured further, a glimpse of Jenna's figure flickered in the distance. "Help me!" she cried, her voice echoing a melody of defeat. Would they reach her? Or would they be swallowed whole by the insatiable darkness, never to be seen again? The frightening pull of the shadows whispered to them, "You're too late, come, join us." There was no turning back now, just an unfathomable darkness stretching before them, waiting eagerly for their next move. The darkness felt alive, a suffocating creature wrapping its vicious tendrils around them. Mark could barely breathe under its weight. Its whispers clawed at his mind, feeding on uncertainty. But through the terror, he felt the warmth of Sarah's grip, the steady presence of Liam, and Jenna's fleeting figure in his heart. They couldn't let the shadows claim them. This battle wouldn't define who they were. "Keep moving," Mark commanded, his voice like a torchlight against the looming dread. "We will find her." They pressed forward, hearts racing, each step echoing loudly in the stillness. As they cut through the oppressive blackness, flickering images flickered around them, fragments of forgotten dreams, glimpses of haunted moments they tried desperately to bury. Faces of regrets distorted into twisted reflections, taunting them with haunting familiarity. "Stay strong," Liam shouted, forcing the candle's light further into the darkness. "We aren't alone." And just then, a fierce scream broke through. Mark's heart dropped. "Jenna!" But it was a cry for help, not despair. She was close, but would they reach her before her spirit succumbed to the shadows? Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, closing in on their path. The air crackled dangerously, weight accumulating in a tangible pressure that squeezed at their lungs. Tension rose, but Mark clung to hope. "This is a nightmare. We can wake up. Keep your eyes on the light," Sarah shouted, lifting her chin. Her expression ignited something amongst them, a flicker of power, a reminder of their strength woven together. "Jenna!" In the abyss ahead, her form materialized as they pushed deeper, disoriented but still fighting. "Help!" she cried again, her voice cutting through the veil of despair. Mark could see shadows wrapping around her, pulling her further down into the depths. "No!" Jenna shouted, her hands raised as if trying to fight off the encroaching darkness. Mark's throat tightened. He seized the candle, gripping it tighter until his knuckles turned white. "I want to let them take you. Charge forward. Together." Sarah urged, with a determined yell. They launched themselves as one, the light of the candle burning brighter than any fear. In unity, they spread their arms, chanting against the encroaching shadow with every ounce of conviction they could muster. "We are not our fears. We will not surrender." As they advanced, their voices rose above the din of darkness. The shadows screeched in rebellion, their forms curled and twisted, trying to swallow the light. But it didn't dim. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through, causing the shadows to falter, fluttering like leaves in a storm. Mark's heart surged with hope. "This is our moment. Jenna, we're almost there." In a surge of adrenaline, he broke free from their tight circle, lunging toward Jenna's figure. The shadows roared in anger, tendrils whipping at him like angry serpents, but he fought through them, the flicker of the candle burning brightly. "I'm coming for you," he yelled, feeling his heart pounding against his chest. Each desperate lunge ignited courage in his veins, a mantra of love and determination. "Hold on." As he reached her, Jenna met his gaze, tears streaming down her face, but hope igniting behind her eyes. "Mark! Help me!" she cried, reaching for him. "I've got you!" he yelled, gripping her hands tighter as he pulled her toward the flame. With a surge, they stumbled back into the protective embrace of their family, tangible warmth wrapping around them. The moment they united, the shadows shrieked in fury. The candle flickered wildly, the light swelling around them as if grappling with the darkness. "It's not just a candle," Mark shouted. "It's us. Together, we are stronger." With a final roar of defiance, they thrust their hands forward, the candle glowing like a beacon of courage. The shadows recoiled, glimpsing at the brilliant light. "We are more than our past." Jenna screamed, and as if a curtain was drawn back, the darkness began to fade, their secret fears, their regrets, everything disintegrated into the folds of the light, transformed. Pain subsided, replaced with a warmth that filled their hearts, washing away doubts. The shadows dwindled, shrieked, then vanished. Breathing heavily, they stood together, hearts racing as they glanced around. The oppressive darkness lifted, revealing a tranquil room bathed in soft light. The storm outside began to quiet, rolling thunder morphing into a whisper. "We did it!" Liam's voice broke the silence, a mix of awe and disbelief. Mark wrapped Sarah, Jenna, and Liam in an embrace thick with relief. "We came through. Together." With that powerful bond renewed, they settled into a comforting silence. No longer haunted by fears from their memories, they understood. The darkness had only served to strengthen their connection, reminding them that genuine strength lies in accepting their truths and navigating the shadows together. That night, they filled their hearts with the warmth that had chased the darkness away. The storm had passed, yet the storm within them had transformed into a fierce light, each moment of vulnerability woven into their unbreakable bond, and as they took a breath, embracing the calm, they knew they were finally free. If you've loved this story and want to experience more heart-pounding tales, you need to subscribe now to the channel. Don't let fear keep you from more thrilling adventures. Smash that like button to help us reach even more adventure seekers. You have the power to keep the momentum going. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this electrifying conclusion. What fears do you think we should confront next? And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to unravel these adventures alongside you. True fans know the importance of spreading the thrill,